Welcome to our class. This is Comparative Education, EDU411. We are going to look at the third phase in the development of comparative education. Before we start, I want to point out that I'm not happy with those guys who are not attending class, especially those ones who are asking for PDF. Yesterday, I looked for them. I did not see any of them attending class. And even today, they are not there. Have sad information to them that next year, after, when they will be looking for their marks so that they graduate, I'll not be available. I'll not be available because I have said and I repeat, I want to repeat here that UOE is not just somewhere you come and click somewhere to get a paper. No, no, you just have to work for it, especially in my courses. I don't encourage students who just come there to get marks. You must be prepared, you must be trained. But some of you will teach my children, and I don't want people who are not prepared to go and handle my children. And that is why I'm insisting that you have to attend classes and you have to properly attend them. And I'm monitoring. Ask those ones who are going to graduate this year and those ones who have graduated. I know, I insist that you must do the right thing the way I'm doing the right thing. I'm not mad to teach you daily. No, I'm not mad. I know I have a purpose, and that purpose has to be accomplished. Now, my friends, having said that, allow me to go straight to what we are supposed to do. Today, I want to deal with phase three of or in the development of comparative education. This phase, we have titled it the phase of concern for cultural context from 1900 to the end of the Second World War, which took place in 1945. Now, the publication in the 1900 of the short essays by Michael Sadler, and you're supposed to know that this took place between 1861 and 1943. It ushered in new phase of comparative studies in education. Although intimations of this approach may be discerned in the work of some of earlier writers, notably Matthew Arnold in England, William T. Harris in USA, and P.E. Lavesa in France. From this point on, new prospects for comparative education were revealed that were more comprehensive, more analytical, and that had greater explanatory potential. The approach was more comprehensive because specific educational systems were regarded as the contemporary outcomes of an identifiable set of historical and social forces or factors. The schools of a particular country, it was argued, could be studied only as integral part of the society in which they had developed. Part of the school system could not be wrecked out of their educational context, nor could the entire school system be examined in isolation from their total cultural environment. The first work done, and this one you must take it to the bank, that the first work done within this phase characterized, gave as much attention to historical and potential developments outside the school as to the narration of the events within the school system. Later, this heavy historical emphasis was gradually replaced by the growing data drawn from economics and sociology. Trufena, you are there. Elizabeth, you are there. Kiprono, Ngetich, thank you for attending class. Tell your friends that it is not business as usual. Attending class is not an optional, but it's a must. Tell them that it's a must, and let them try me by not attending class. We shall see. Okay, uh, we have many writers in comparative education who had been content to offer descriptive materials on foreign education systems, implying that such facts in themselves had something valuable to say. The rapidly growing social science and new works in historical methods tended to deny that the fact that outside a context of explanation could convey so much. This critique, and I want to repeat that this critique was reflected or increasingly in the 20th century in the work that was done by comparative educationists, which now began to emphasize the dynamic analysis and explanations instead of static institution or institutional descriptions. The concept of causation, the concept of causation that began to grow and eventually to dominate the field was combined with optimism about the predictive value of causal analysis. Kwambai, we are there. Franklin Yagon, we are there. And that is, thank you for attending class. Tell your friends that it is not business as usual. They have to attend classes if they want to qualify and to graduate and leave this university. Or else they will just remain here with us. So by the by the close of the 19th century, most governments were encouraging and even sponsoring studies of foreign systems of education. Those involved in this study became more concerned with the problems of comparison. It was not enough to accumulate masses of information about educational practices in other countries or simply to borrow practices indiscriminately. Questions of interpreting uh, observed practices in context and of judging or predicting whether a particular arrangement of practice could be transplanted successfully in the home environment had to be faced. Friends, I don't know, I don't see James. I've not seen James, neither have I seen Aisha. Where are the two? I can't see them. Eh? I've started getting worried because they're supposed to be here. They are supposed to lead by example. I've not seen them. So this phase was motivated by the need to move from encyclopedic, descriptive, and sometimes uncritical approach of the earlier phases to a more analytical approach. The trend towards analytical study of the interrelationship between education and society became more generalized. So that grew a concern to understand factors which help to shape systems of education. The problem for comparativists was no longer one of selective borrowing, but of predicting the likely success of educational transplant through knowledge of cultural context in both the donor and the recipient country. Most comparativists had to account for the features existing in the systems of education in terms of the forces and factors that shaped them. The individuals who made substantive, and I repeat, the individuals who made substantive contribution to the development of comparative education during this phase were mainly philosophers, historians, and sociologists. And we are going to discuss some of them. And in this year's exam, you will not sit for the exam until you have analyzed something or you have described something about these early comparative educationists. Remember, have been giving questions uh, on on this on the contribution of these comparative educationists, the travelers' tales, and today I'll also give something on this one. These writers, you must just know their contribution because unless you know their contribution to comparative education, then we shall be doing a disservice to this course. Now, today, I want us to look in this third phase. I want us to look at the contribution of William T. Harris. William T. Harris, 1959 to 1909. Okay, William T. Harris recognized William T. Harris recognized the necessity of discussing and examining the educational system of a country as an entity and accepted the thesis that education and society are intimately associated. He recognized the necessity of discussing and examining educational system of a country as an entity. And he also accepted a theory that education and society are intimately associated to one another. To him, comparative education can reveal the general or the universal principles about the relationship of society and education. To him, education breaks down caste systems and brings about a taste of democracy. However, he was more cautious on the use of statistics in education, particularly statistics of foreign systems of education. He argued that each individual nation puts its own stamp on its system of education. Therefore, it is not possible to borrow from another system as freely as one might like to, because what is suitable for one social institution may not be suitable for another. This is because each nation's education system is strongly associated or strongly affected by its culture, embodied ideas reflecting in the culture. We also have Wilhelm Dietschy, who lived between 1833 and 1911. Dietschy was a professor of philosophy and pedagogy at the University of Berlin. He stressed the total and dynamic interrelation of education and society. He believed that education should serve the larger interests of the society by putting into consideration that the lessons derived from comparative study might serve as possible guides to bringing education and contemporary society closely together. Yes, Donald Ruto, you were saying that the voice is okay. I don't know if others are also getting me clearly. Uh, Allow me to talk about the work of Isaac Kandel, who existed between 1881 and 1965. Isaac contributed a lot to the understanding of the relationship between education and the political or social problems confronting a nation. In all his works, both as an editor of the educational yearbook and as the author of an impressive series of studies in comparative education, he advocated for the use of historical, social, and political data to explain the variety of educational outcomes. He also he was also a political liberal thinker who saw the progress of humanity as measured by the movement towards more enlightenment, individualistic and democratic school practices. In his classic book, Comparative Education, that appeared in 1933, at the time when economic depression, rising in nationalism, emergency of modern authoritarian ideologies, and problems of democracy preempted the attention of educators all over the world. Candell viewed comparative education as a comparison of variant philosophies of education based on not only theories but also actual practices that prevailed. Broad social movement, political development, and intellectual currents swept across nations or national boundary, and each country reacted differently to these disturbances. Candell contributed to the theory of school and society and to the theory of causation. The forces and factors that he identified are nationalism, political ideology, and historical antecedents. He emphasized the need to collect accurate data, and his emphasis was on cultural historical context in which an education system develops. He argued that the importance of studying the national character is that it would help one to understand the character of the school by first understanding the country's national character, which is as a result of the philosophy and history of the society. Friends, allow me to talk about the contribution of Nicholas Hans. Nicholas Hans brought to comparative study the theory of causation and a search for explanation. Hans did more than merely synthesizing the separate themes found in the work of Lavesa, Sandler, and Candell. By contradicting, he concentrated on relatively few factors, and by addressing them historically, he clarified the impact of environmental forces on educational outcomes. He distinguished between natural factors such as race, language, geographical location, climate, and natural resources, and the ideological factors such as major European religious traditions and the secular forces of humanism, socialism, nationalism, and also democracy. Florence, you're saying you are getting me clearly. That is okay. It's good to get that feedback. It's very important. So, Michael Sadler was another comparative educations that we want to concern with. Michael Sadler, who lived between 1886 and 1943. The work of Michael Sadler brought together the major separate strands of comparative education exemplified in the individual efforts of Arnold, Harris, and Lavesa. From 1894 to 1895, Sadler was a member of the Bryce Commission of Secondary Education. For the next 8 years, he was the director of the Office of Special Inquiries and Report at the Board of Education. The special report issued under his guidance was strongly historical, empirical, and comparative. Sadler's major theoretical contribution to comparative education is the axiom that the schools of the society must be studied in the context of the society. He argued that all the good and the true education is an expression of national life and character. It is rooted in the history of the nation and fitted in its need. In his view, the critical value of studying foreign systems of education is that it would in turn be fitted to study the understanding of our own. He called for attention to an awareness of the importance of the school's cultural context and the dangers of piecemeal educational borrowing. He used sociology and historical data to explain trends in education. His famous essay of 1900, How Far Can We Learn Anything of Practical Value from the Study of Foreign Systems of Education, summarized his view on the dynamic relationship of school and society and on the value of comparative education. Friends, Netish says that kindly spell the name of the scholars. Okay, I'll do spell the name of the scholars. I re, I do understand. I'll spell at the end of the